No, I'm not genuflecting. The Milwaukee Brewers are just better than the Cincinnati Reds. We saw it all weekend long. I mean, when you get swept, it's really hard to say anything else but that. But there were so many reasons as to why. Dom and myself will get into it on today's Locked On Reds, Locked On Brewers crossover. Thank you all so much for joining us here today. Locked On Reds and Locked On Brewers is part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Thanks for making us your first listen. We know you love to, and we're free and available on all platforms. On today's episode, we're going to look at just how much better the Brewers are than the Reds. It's really, from my estimation, Dom, it's really more of a blueprint, something I'd like the Reds to emulate. But also there were a couple of surprises. Graham Ashcraft for me comes to mind. And then how we look moving forward, because I feel like the Brewers have gone through a rough stretch here, and I think that this weekend was the get right serum for them. And we'll get into all of that here on today's crossover, which is brought to you by BetOnline. Today's episode is brought to you by BetOnline, that has you covered this season with more props, odds, and lines than ever before. BetOnline is where the game starts. All right, Dom, I appreciate you getting the chance to talk with you here about this series. By the way, welcome. This is the first time we're getting to talk with you here on Locked On Reds. And congratulations. I mean, that was just some good dang baseball played by the Brewers this weekend.
They needed that, man. It's been a weird last couple of weeks for the Brewers, and for them, they were most excited not so much about the win, but more about the happy flight, given the fact that this is now officially the end of 3 consecutive 3-city road trips. They are very excited to get back home and get back to a little more normalcy, no more of these marathon road trips for the rest of the season. And furthermore, they finished one game above 500 because of finishing off that sweep yesterday on these 3 series. So they went 15-14, playing 3 straight 3-city road trips. That's very, very impressive, no matter who you play. And that's why I think you saw them a little more jubilant walking off the field yesterday. I was absolutely I talked about it in my podcast on Friday, saying, like, look, you need to get a series win. You're the better team, hands down. But you need to prove to the rest of the Central, specifically the Cardinals, that you can get a sweep against a team that you're better than. And the Brewers needed that confidence builder moving into maybe their biggest series of the year, starting today with those Cardinals at home.
That's going to be a lot of fun to watch, even from an outsider's perspective. So far as, obviously no horse in the race. The Reds aren't really trying to race up toward any top of any division. They're just hoping for third at this point. From a Reds perspective, just watching this team, number one, they really miss Tyler Stevenson. But number two, they have to play. If they're playing a good team like the Brewers, playing a top-flight National League team like the Brewers, they have to play perfect. They cannot give up anything. You can't have an error. You can't have, walks and maybe a missed double play here or there. They literally have to make no errors on the scoreboard and errors in our minds. When you watch a play and you're just like, well, they're not going to score that an error, but that obviously should have been made. You can't do that if you're the Reds, and they had that problem a lot this weekend. There were many instances, and I look at the start, and we'll talk a little bit more about Graham Ashcraft, but we'll look at some of the things that he did here in a few minutes, because that was just a microcosm for me of the whole series. The Reds did enough to stay close-ish, but not enough that they really, the only time I think the Brewers ever really thought about a loss was Friday night, whenever Joey Votto's ball landed like a couple feet in front of the wall. Other than that, I think the Brewers were pretty comfortable.
Yeah, an inch off of the handle and more toward the barrel for that one for Votto, it's gone. And we're talking about a completely different outlook, especially for the Brewers, thinking, look, they didn't have Josh Hader available this weekend. He was out on paternity leave, just welcomed in his first child. Congratulations to him and Maria, Lucas, baby boy, into the world now. But they didn't have Josh Hader. And Brad Boxberger said at postgame on Friday, it's like, this place is smaller than a box of Cracker Jacks. And, he didn't know if it was gone or not. I think for the play that I think that jumps out to me of, plays you need to make is the Tommy Pham failed jump on the wall and left on Andrew McCutchen's very catchable double. I believe that was in the 3rd inning yesterday, and that started the rally for the Brewers to get things going in Game 3 of that series, because you were hanging in there pound for pound. Mike Mauner was off to a good start. Tommy Pham should make that play. He looked like he was afraid of the wall, lost count of his steps. I know Tommy Pham's not a good defensive outfielder. He's got a decent arm, but he's there for his bats. And that play was like another one, like, oh my goodness, we keep making our own little mistakes against a team that's better than us, and it's going to happen. Now, granted, the Brewers had a lot of home runs this weekend, as they have been all year long against the Reds. So that's more on the pitchers than it is on the defense. But I look at that play from Pham and having Jonathan India up with Adrian Hauser on the ropes in the fourth inning yesterday, a chance to deliver the kill shot after allowing 3 runs that inning, a pair of walks. He's over 30 pitches for the frame, and he's swinging 2 pitches into the at-bat. Like, man, got to be a little more patient and stop pressing against a guy that's struggling to find the zone. Little mistakes like that in the microcosm of a losing streak or a losing season really add up for a team like the Reds that are just looking for something good to root for right now.
100%. And you mentioned Boxberg. It's kind of funny. I've always thought about him because he was a Reds prospect. He was traded a long time ago to the Padres in the Matt Latos deal. And I always wonder on the Brad Boxberger side of things if he's like, you know what? I didn't have to pitch in that ballpark. Like, I'm glad that it only happens every so often in a divisional tilt. Because he's right. I mean, there were a couple of hits that I kind of thought, maybe dead baseball, maybe that's really not much to talk about, but there were just some fly balls that kind of dropped, and it happens for every team. It doesn't just happen for the Reds. But overall, that was my biggest thought on the weekend for the Redlegs, is that as much as it hurts for a sweep, it just felt like there were so many instances where it's just like, oh boy, just a little bit more. And there's some performances from guys that I honestly am almost chalking it up to, hey, let's build some trade value at this point, right? So we'll see exactly how that all plays out. But all in all, a Brewers team, and kind of like you said, Josh Hader comes in on the paternity list. They probably weren't going to be probable starters anyway, but Brandon Woodruff and Freddie Peralta not available. You had Colton Wong, noted Reds destroyer, not available, and the Brewers still got it done and got it done convincingly.
Yeah, if there was a series for the Reds to get one again, like they did back in, it feels like 2 years ago. Given it's only a month ago, but the Reds took a series from the Brewers, and this kind of was the teetering, like, oh my gosh, the Brewers are as good as we think they are kind of thing. And that's when everybody was healthy. You beat Adrian Hauser, you beat him into the dirt. That started in the finale of that series in the Christian Yelich cycle, wacky 9th inning, yada yada. But with if there's a chance to get the Brewers, it would have been this one, kind of like how the Brewers look at their last week in New York, taking on the Mets without Scherzer and without DeGrom. And that would have been a great opportunity for them to take 2 out of 3 from the Mets. They had an opportunity to do so, and they didn't. Granted, they didn't get swept like the Reds did this past week. Right. But little victories like that for David Bell, looking for something to look forward to for his team, it just feels like you keep getting punched in the gut, in the gut, in the gut, in the gut. It's just, man, what do we got to do to win a series? In a series that, you look at these final scores, 5-4 on Friday, close. Yeah, the winning run at the plate on Friday. Saturday it was a lot closer than 7-3. It felt closer than that. And even yesterday, 6-3 felt closer to that. And then Hunter Renfroe unloads on the ball. I don't think still has come down yet. It's just these swings are just absolute backbreakers that you feel like you're in it. And the air just gets sucked out of Great American Ballpark. It's a tough go of things right now there on the Riverfront.
It really is. And it's funny you mentioned David Bell, because no sooner did Sunday's game end than I started getting mentions of fire David Bell. I want to reiterate, I don't know how this is any of his fault. Like, obviously he can do a little bit to kind of sway a couple of wins here or there, but the man has been handed the roster that he's been handed, and this is where we are. But I will say this, you mentioned something earlier that I want to get to here, and that is the pitching, because the pitching was a surprise for me. The pitching for the Reds has really started to even out, started to look a lot better. And then this series didn't look very good at all. I want to get into that here in just a moment. But, Dom, do you monitor your macros? Do you kind of watch all those numbers?
Oh, yeah. I'm all in on it.
There it is right there. Yeah, I try, at least protein, and I try to keep the carbs down and things like that. But when it comes to vitamins and things like that, there's so many options out there. There's letters like A and B and D and numbers on top of letters, and I'm like, you know what, whatever. Athletic Greens has provided us with an easy solution. It's AG1. It provides you with literally everything. It's got all the probiotics, it's got super nutrients, it's got really awesome stuff that whenever you put a scoop of AG1 in your glass at the beginning of the day, you just drink a little bit of water with some AG1. It's got a tropical taste to it. I don't know if you've noticed that too, that I kind of dig in the morning. It also brings with it all of the vitamins and nutrients that you need every single day, just in one gulp. Very, very useful. You got to check it out. Athletic Greens was created by a guy who kind of went through a bit of a health crisis where his doctor told him he needs more vitamins than his cabinet will hold or his wallet will pay for. And all of a sudden he comes up with this solution, AG1, that's going to help you improve your health dramatically on a daily basis. And all you got to do is drink a glass of water with a scoop of powder each day. It's AG1. Go to athleticgreens.com/MLB network today to check out this awesome offer where you will get a year's supply of vitamin D and 5 travel packs for free with your first order. That's athleticgreens.com/MLB network today to get the ultimate nutritional insurance. Thanks again for making Locked On Reds and Locked On Brewers your first listen of the day. We're free and available on all platforms. This was a series in which the Brewers took all 3 games. This was a series in which there were a little bit of positives for the Reds, but mostly just a lot of just gut-wrenching negatives for me. And not necessarily in the terms of, gosh, I think that they're going to lose every game moving forward, though I've heard that take. The biggest thing for me, though, was the pitching. Hunter Greene and Graham Ashcraft here recently have been revelations. And Hunter Greene, for the biggest part of June and the last part of May, had stopped allowing home runs. I mean, you remember very well, whenever he was pitching there at American Family, he gave up 5 homers in one start. And ever since then, he calmed down. He'd been pitching pretty well. Then he gave up a couple of long balls on Friday. Graham Ashcraft, kind of a tough performance there. I thought it was interesting, and I give Craig Counsell credit here. I'm not going to complain. I'm going to say, hey, I love the gamesmanship of baseball. This was perfect gamesmanship. The umpire asked him to take off his wedding band on his glove hand. I'm like, what? But you get in the Rook's head, and he had a tough performance. That was one of those things where it's like, look, it's not going to be easy sailing through the major leagues. Ashcraft, you're going to have to figure some things out. But all in all, the starting pitching, and then Mike Minor went back to more of what his first start in a Reds uniform looked like than his second start. So the starting pitching set the Reds back so much that, yes, the lineup helped, and they missed some opportunities, but even just those few missed opportunities really doomed them because of the starting pitching's performance.
I've been thoroughly impressed with Hunter Greene. I got a chance to see him in the minor leagues as well. For Hunter, it's hard enough for any pitcher in the big leagues to face the same team 3 times in the span of 50 days.
Yeah.
And then furthermore, for it to be a rookie, and even furthermore, for a guy to legitimately only have 2 pitches. And for a team that have had so much success against Hunter Greene in that first outing here in Milwaukee, for him to bounce back the way he has in his last 2 outings, relying on that slider, really catching hitters off guard. He's throwing more sliders than fastballs these days, which is quite a sentence to say for a guy that throws 100 miles an hour. I was really impressed with him on Friday. He rolled with the punches. Giving up 4 earned runs as a rookie in today's baseball in that ballpark, I feel like is a win. You did your job. I know it's not a quality start per se, maybe not what you're expecting out of the soon-to-be ace of your staff. I was very impressed with Hunter Greene, but as you know, your bullpen is put together by duct tape right now. They handled things on Friday, but I mean, Sessa had a tough go of it. Detweiler gives up the homer on Friday that ultimately was the difference, and that was, quite frankly, a good matchup for the Reds. A lefty versus Keston Hiura. Hiura's got reverse splits for his entire career, so that was just as shocking for us in Milwaukee as it was for you guys for Detweiler giving that up. You're put together by duct tape right now, and it's just you lose these great outings. And Mike Minor, he obviously lost some steam. I look at his outing. How many changeups did he throw, despite it being his worst pitch statistically this year? And he had the Brewers fooled. The Brewers will strike out. Yes, they hit homers, but they will strike out. They're like a poor man's version of the Atlanta Braves. So the fact that he was still throwing out there that changeup, gives up the homer to Caratini. But then in the bullpen, again, Hunter Renfroe, who is hunting the Reds right now. It's just been like 1 or 2 pitches in these games, and it's ruining it for the starters, making it look a whole lot worse.
There's something about Brewers' recent additions through trades, Hunter Renfroe and Willie Adames, that just, I
Mhm.
don't know if maybe the Reds were in on negotiations for him. I don't know about Renfroe, but I know that the Reds were at least talking to the Rays about Willie Adames and how much dominant those two guys have been this year for Hunter Renfroe, obviously, but the last 2 years for Willie Adames. I joked around in the first game whenever Adames hit his first homer of the series, would not be his only one, that if Willie Adames and Ian Happ from the Cubs teamed up and faced the entirety of the Cincinnati Reds, they'd still be favored by a large, large margin because Reds pitchers don't know what to do with them. So I looked at those guys and they got theirs. What was it that surprised you the most about the Brewers in this series? Because when I looked at this, I low-key thought, and maybe I'm a little bit of a homer saying this, but I kind of saw a wounded Brewers side coming in, and I did think that the Reds had a chance to take maybe 2 out of 3. I didn't think they'd sweep or anything, but maybe 2 out of 3, and then they just got ran over, and the Brewers are going home and they got themselves some Skyline chili on along the way, and they're pretty happy about it.
I think your assessment is accurate that it was an opportunity for the Reds. The Brewers coming in having lost 2 out of 3 to the Mets, coming in ice cold, having lost, I believe it was 14 of their last 17 games,
Mm.
and just ice cold right now. And the Brewers kind of looked at the Reds saying, this is the team we need to get back on track against. And for the Reds, that needed to be absolutely perfect baseball. And for the Brewers, they got away. I mean, Luis Urias made a couple of boneheaded plays. Willie Adames got burned on a play as well over the weekend. I look at this team that, I mean, Tyrone Taylor made a couple of big gambles on sliding catches that could have not gone his way, that could still be rolling and be inside the Parkers right now. The
Mm.
Brewers played well. They didn't play perfect, but they're well. That just goes to show you right now where these two teams are right now. The floor of the Brewers is still probably higher than the ceiling of the Reds right now, which is, it's a sad thing to say, but it's true. And for the Brewers, for a team, it's shocking to think this. This time a year ago, the Brewers were exactly 68 games in, 38-30, the exact same record, and coming off of a sweep at home at the hands of the Reds, where they won 3 consecutive games here in Milwaukee. And everyone
Right.
was like, oh my goodness, what's going on with the Brewers? They're 38-30. What's happening? The Reds just swept us. They're legit. They can hit. It's amazing how fast that turned over, given it's been a calendar year. And now we're looking at the Reds being a rebuilding team. You're dealing with an owner that's fighting with the fans. And, well, we can talk about owners with the Brewers right now, too. But the thing is like, it has happened so fast. And the Brewers trying to make it 5 consecutive postseasons. And another team that probably could have made the postseason last year, but didn't because of injuries, and then decided to tear it all down. It's just kind of sad to see.
Yeah, we've talked at length about the ridiculousness that was this last offseason's plan and how it really just looked like a dude who was balancing his QuickBooks app on his computer. But no, there was a lot of just huge question marks as to why the Reds took the step back that they did. There's a lot of young talent that is interesting and is going to make this team very good in a couple of years, but this season and very possibly next season is just going to be full with guys like Brandon Drury who come here and they're doing a great job, but that kind of long term, I don't necessarily know that I want the Reds to invest in him long term. I think that they need to turn him into a much better trade chip than a guy that they would extend. And that's kind of a feeling that I get as we move forward through the season, that the Reds really need to look toward the future. And that's something that they have basically told us since January that they are just not want to do. Whereas the Brewers, there's going to be a dogfight at the top of this division between the Brewers and the Cardinals. And kind of like you said, that series, another installment of this season's version of Brewers Cardinals coming up at you. It's tonight, right? Or is it Tuesday night?
Tonight, yeah, 4-game
Yeah.
series. It's going to be a really good one. Burns versus Michael is here tonight, which, Michael is coming off of the near no-hitter. Corbin Burns is getting back on track. He had a great start against the Mets over this past week. Appointment viewing for me, Monday Night Baseball. Hope you got at MLB.tv and tune it on. Catch myself with Jeff Levering and Bill Schroeder. I'll be handing them stats all night.
There you go. And it's a perfect segue too into what we can look forward to, because this is a huge 4-game set for the NL Central as a whole, because it's 2 teams at the top and 3 other teams that are just messing around trying to figure out who's third place, which we'll get into here in a little bit. But I'll tell you what, and I haven't looked at any lines right now, but I'd be very interested as to where BetOnline puts the line for this Brewers-Cardinals matchup, and especially when you look at the over-under with Michaelis and Burns on the mound. I have a friend that always tells me, when you get a marquee pitching matchup like this, take the over, because there's going to be something that happens with the lineups that somebody's going to go off. There's just something's going to happen. And I don't necessarily know what that means, but I'd be interested to see where those lines go. But I noticed you just pointed down for the under.
I want to take the under. I mean, Burns isn't going to allow more than 3 runs. I mean, I don't know what it is either, but Burns is not going to allow more than 3 runs.
Be interested to see what BetOnline has to say about that. And if you want to find out more about a great bet, go to betonline.net. BetOnline.net has you covered with all the sports, whether you're talking about the current Major League Baseball season. The NBA Finals just wrapped up, but there's going to be a lot of great stuff in the NBA happen this offseason. Is Russell Westbrook going to be in LA? I don't know. And you've got the Stanley Cup that is just absolutely will not quit. Right now, we've got Game 3 going on tonight. Colorado looks like they're just going to sweep through the entire playoffs and get this cup, but the Lightning got the experience. BetOnline's got you covered for all that stuff, including boxing and MMA. Really good MMA card coming up here in a couple of weeks that you can check out. BetOnline has you covered with more props, odds, and lines than ever before. Go on the website on your desktop or mobile device today and check out the trends in action. BetOnline is where the game starts. Thanks again for giving us a watch, giving us a listen today. This is Jeff and Dom from Locked On Reds and Locked On Brewers. We're crossing over here. We're wrapping up this series where the Brewers took 3 games at Great American Ballpark. And if you're not watching us on YouTube, we have our handy-dandy Twitter about calling them tags. Twitter username. See, I was really rolling there. Usually Steve makes fun of me when I trip up like that. But
it's Monday. It's all good. It's good.
It's Monday.
It's a weekend for you.
Got that Monday feeling, But you can follow me at Jeff Carr with 3 Fs. You can follow Dom at Dom_Cotroneo, Cotroneo.
Bonus points if you spell it right on the first try.
Yeah, sometimes I trip over that too. Don't ask me to do the Blue Nile read and say the word jewelers fast.
Yeah.
It's very hard for me to do. Very hard. But no, I look at this season, Dom, and I picked preseason, and I still feel good about this because I feel like healthy and together, the Brewers have the best team in the National League. I still feel good about the Brewers winning the National League Central, or best team in the National League Central. I'm sorry, the Mets and the Dodgers would have something to say if they heard me say that. But the Brewers,
the Dodgers right now, they look a little human right now.
That's true. They do. But I think that the Brewers are really going to win this division. And of course, they got a huge opportunity with this series coming up tonight. What have you seen, especially with the guys who are hurt right now? How quickly will they be back? And how much longer are you going to have to rely on some different dudes getting some big starts every 5th day?
I look at 3 things overall impacting the Brewers right now. And first and foremost, before I get into the 3 things, I said on my season preview podcast for the Brewers that this division was going to come down to the final week. So while this is a big series here starting tonight, I truly believe this is going to be a bare knuckle brawl down to the very end of the season between the Cardinals and the Brewers. So buckle up for that. These 2 teams match up so well. First thing that I get into is the starting pitching. Brandon Woodruff is on his way back. He's dealing his ankle is fine now, but he's dealing with something called Raynaud's syndrome. Raynaud's syndrome is where you have blood vessel issues in your hand and in your fingertips that causes discoloration and causes numbness sensations and lack of grip strength. And he has really felt it with breaking balls. However, he just made it through a rehab start with Nashville over the weekend. He'll make another one this week, so he should be back by week's end next week. Freddie Peralta has been out since mid-May. He won't be back until August in a best case scenario. He just started playing catch. He's got a shoulder issue. It's non-surgical, which is the good news when you're talking about a shoulder, but he was shut down for a few weeks, just started playing catch, hasn't even been stretched out yet. So again, best case scenario is August for Freddie Peralta. And you look at these arms, they got a lot to cover right now. Jason Alexander's been a good send for them. Ethan Small made his big league debut, but hasn't been able to stick around. So they're going to a 5-man rotation, and they need every single one of these 5 guys to show up to go with the Cy Young winner in Corbin Burnes. The second thing I come up with is the lack of health offensively, too. Colton Wong's on the shelf now, and this is the healthiest the Brewers have been in a long time this weekend against the Reds. So the Brewers, you think of the supporting cast with Christian Yelich, right? You think of the guys like Colton Wong, like Andrew McCutchen, Hunter Renfroe, Luis Urias, Willie Adames. Those 5 guys, along with Colton Wong, they've only
Right.
played together for 4 games all season long.
Wow.
So now that Wong's on the shelf, they're trying to figure out to make this offense work without him. So keep that in mind. The Brewers still haven't played at full strength offensively. And the third thing is their middle relief has been absolutely battered and bruised. I know all 3 of these points have to do with injuries, but 3 key things is that Trevor Gott is somebody that no one's heard of, but he's been arguably the second most important pitcher on the Brewers behind Josh Hader because he's been the fireman. He's been the guy getting it to that lethal 7, 8, 9 of Boxberger, Williams, and then Hader. And now that guy is Hobie Milner, who you saw plenty of this past weekend. Sidearm and soft throwing lefty, and he's been a heaven sent for the Brewers as well. But they have had no reliable middle relief, which is why they've been on this terrible stretch as of late. Because close games that are maybe down 3-2 or 5-4 heading into the 5th and 6th innings have suddenly become 7-4 or 8-6. They're not able to stay in it because of their middle relief. So that's why this snowball has become an avalanche as of late for the Brewers. Those are the big 3 things that health is all that matters right now for the Brewers because they truly are on paper the best team in the Central. So when they're healthy, I mean, they're not just the best team in the Central. They're a top 3 team in the National League and a legitimate pennant contender when they are healthy.
Yeah, the National League is going to be, whoever makes it into the postseason, that's going to be a lot of fun to watch because the NLCS is going to be, I know it's not going to be chalk because it's easy to say it's going to be Dodgers, Mets, but the Brewers are definitely going to have something to say about it because, they're going to play one of those teams before the NLCS. And I think it's going to be interesting to see because if they get healthy at the right time, if you're talking about Peralta and those guys back, and you can kind of move Eric Lauer back into more of a middle relief where I really, as an outsider looking in, I really like him there. And I see guys like Andy Ashby, who's out. I didn't see, is Brent Suter hurt as well?
Suter's still around. He just didn't pitch much. He has not been very effective. And you said Andy Ashby, it's his nephew, Aaron Ashby.
Ashby.
It is his uncle, though, by the way, with the Padres. Right. Yes, he was actually made a start in San Diego, and Andy was in attendance. So that was pretty cool to see. But Ashby's been really good. There are times that he gives up too much contact, but that slider's a big league slider. Throws 97-mile-an-hour sinkers, and then you have the best closer in baseball waiting to go, and then your 8th inning guy any other team would love to have as their closer in Devin Williams. So it's a 7-inning game, perhaps, even 6 innings if you include Boxberger or Gott into that equation. That's all you need out of these guys. And quite frankly, Burnes and Lauer are the only guys reliably giving you 6 innings on every single start. So that's why they struggle so much lately.
Forget Devin Williams, even Hobie Milner at this point the Reds would like because, like you said, the bullpen is duct tape and it's a MacGyver project that they gave to someone who's not MacGyver. And, Derek Johnson is a very awesome pitching coach. You guys know this. He used to be a Brewer, and he has been phenomenal in the guys that he's been able to work with, but it just seems like for every dude that he turns into a stud, the front office hands them some more of just huge project players that are well past their prime or are dealing with some major injury or something like that. And it's just like, if I were Derek Johnson, I'd sit back and I'd be like, can I for once get a guy that has a lot of money on his contract and for a good reason? I don't know. That's just me, but that's how I kind of look at it. And I kind of mentioned that there's some dudes on this team. Brandon Drury is the first dude that I think of that the Reds need to not necessarily be shopping to the first bidder, but to kind of look for the highest bidder because I think there are people out there. And especially when you look at the Padres who just got dealt a huge blow with Manny Machado. Hey, we got a dude. Brandon Drury. He can help you out right now. He is on a career track. He's never hit more than 16 home runs in a season. He's probably going to do that before the All-Star break. He's just playing out of his shoes and maybe a little bit over his skids if you want to be a little bit honest about that. But Brandon Drury brings a name to mind of a guy in the past for the Reds, guy named Dan Straley, who they traded for Luis Castillo. And I keep saying this, like, make that kind of a deal. If you're Nick Krall, the front office needs to be looking for these opportune moments because they've got some big trades in Tyler Mahle and Luis Castillo that if they're going to make them, they better make them this year because they have 2 years of control and they'll lose out on a lot of return if they wait. Or if you're not going to do that, extend them or try to keep them for longer than the 2 years that they currently have left on their deal. There's a lot of question marks of this front office because of this last offseason, but it feels like there's a lot of goodwill that they could build up, and I don't think it would be that hard for them to do that. So how can...
Yeah, the problem with Mahle and Castillo is that Krall is waiting on the market to be set by Frankie Montas. The A's are holding everybody up right now by not trading Frankie Montas because he's got another year of control after this year. You think of similar righties between Castillo and Montas, and everybody looks to Montas before they look at Castillo because they know Castillo is probably going to cost more in the long run.
Yeah, and let's also be honest, too, with the trades of Manaea and Chris Bassett, the A's front office looks just ridiculously smarter than the Reds front office, who literally waived Wade Miley for nothing, traded Tucker Barnhart for a project AA player, and traded Jesse Winker and Eugenio Suarez for a bunch of dudes who are currently hurt right now. Well, Brandon Williamson's not hurt, but there's a lot of speculation because his fastball's only touching 91. Maybe he is hurt or something like that. But there's a lot of stuff going on there that it's like, there are easy comparisons. And you're right. Once Montas gets traded, we'll see what the market looks like. But there's a lot of teams. I mean, there's a lot of teams that are looking for starting pitching. The Mets have got to be on the phone, I would reckon, every other day with the A's and the Reds trying to figure out who they can get. Because with DeGrom and Scherzer hurt, if they get Mahle, Montas, or Castillo, the sky's the limit for that team. So how do they get that deal done and all that? Anyway, that's like a whole nother podcast we could get into, but clearly two teams heading in completely different directions. The Reds are just hopeful for the future. The Brewers are right here, right now, and got a really good shot to go long into these playoffs. Dom, I appreciate getting the chance to talk with you after this series. Looking forward to seeing what the Brewers and the Cardinals can do because believe me, man, there is no love lost when it comes to the Reds and the Cardinals, so I'd rather have the Brewers win any day of the week.
We'd much appreciate it because Cardinals Twitter has already found me a few times right now, but little they know that we're actually currently tied in the standings. So I appreciate you having me on, Jeff. We don't see you again for a while. I don't think we see you again until the second half, if I'm not mistaken. Peeking ahead to the schedule now, yeah, we don't see you. You come to American Family Field August 5th through 7th. So hang in there. Maybe you'll be a completely different team by the time we see you next, because that's after the trade deadline.
Fingers crossed. Maybe see a couple of other guys get called up. There's not a ton of AAA, but there's a couple of exciting prospects who, maybe they take a jump and maybe they can get called up. But other than that, no, there's a lot of interesting stuff for the Reds moving forward, which we will talk about on tomorrow's Locked On Reds. Thanks for joining us, though. Thanks for making Locked On Reds and Locked On Brewers your first listen of the day. Now go check out Locked On MLB because Sully's got you covered on the league-wide news, notes, and everything going on in between, whether you're talking about today or in the past, because, well, Sully's been a baseball fan for a while. Check him out, Locked On MLB, just like Locked On Reds and Locked On Brewers, free and available on all platforms. We'll talk to each and every one of you tomorrow.